President Trump now calls a government shutdown likely as both parties in Congress are really digging in on their demands.
Yeah, the president is blaming Democrats who say they want changes to health care policy before voting for the Republicans' funding bill. Let's get some analysis from pollster and communication strategist Frank Luntz. Frank, great to see you. Who do you think will bear the brunt of this potential shutdown if the government shuts down? Will Democrats or Republicans be blamed?
Normally, Congress is blamed, and we've been through this way too many times over the last 10, 12 years. But that's not always certain. A lot of it depends on what will be said in the next 10 hours and what is said tomorrow and the day after. What is clear is that both sides are not particularly, seemingly not that interested in making an agreement. And what I see from my polling and my focus groups is that the American public has had enough of both sides, had enough of this intransigence and the fact that they can't get something done, particularly now. So I'd say to you that both sides are going to take the brunt of this, and it's just going to make Americans even more cynical and even more angry at Washington, D.C.
One of the kind of concerns or threats that we're hearing from various members of Congress is, the Trump administration could use this to fire federal employees, right? We spoke with Congressman Don Bacon. He said this gives the Trump administration a lot of control to kind of do what they want to do. But I wonder, Frank, if the administration were to do that, if they take this and then get rid of some federal employees, could that actually backfire and then maybe people start blaming Trump more than they would have?
I don't want to answer a hypothetical, but I can tell you this. The one aspect that matters more than any other in a shutdown is whether or not Social Security checks are delivered to recipients. That would make people go nuts if that were to happen. So it's always the single biggest risk. And the second is if military, if our people, our men and women in uniform are not paid for their service, there would be a level of anger there. In the end, the American people trust Washington less than they have at any point. They're very angry with the country that the president's polling numbers have not been all that great, and yet the Democratic numbers have been even worse. It's basically a plague on both your houses, and it's another example of why Washington doesn't seem to work at the very moment the public is demanding more.
When it comes to these ACA subsidies that Democrats are demanding be extended beyond the end of the year, how popular are those subsidies? Would getting rid of them ultimately hurt Republicans, even though it's part of the legislation they just passed?
If that's how it's explained, yes, it would hurt Republicans, because in the end, the public does not want to pay as much as they have to for their health care. It's one of the areas. Food, fuel, housing, and health care are the four key areas that the public is watching day by day to see how much things cost. And the issue of affordability is no less important now than it was 6 months ago or a year ago during the elections. That said, the public does believe that there's waste, abuse, mismanagement, and even corruption that happens in Washington, D.C., and that there are ways for the people to pay less and for Washington and for government to cost less. But what you just raised is the key talking point for the Democrats and why they could be successful. On the Republican side, Donald Trump continues to drive considerable support among his voters. And they have no issue with the government being shut down at all, because they believe it's just him exercising his rights. And they want him to make a difference, a daily difference in the way Washington functions. In the end, I'm watching independents, I'm watching younger voters, and probably most important, and I've said this on your show before, Hispanics and Latinos. In the end, where they see the government is going to determine who controls Congress next year, who controls the Senate next year, and those segments have not made a decision yet over who they blame and who they credit for where things stand right now.
So I wonder what you make of this New York Times Siena College poll, Frank, that shows President Trump's approval rating largely unchanged since April, yes, but those groups, some of which you just named, that propelled his campaign last year, Hispanic voters, voters under 30, his net approval has dropped significantly. Should he be concerned about that?
He should be concerned about it, and the Democrats should be concerned because their numbers have dropped even further. When you ask about how well Donald Trump has handled some of these issues, he gets lukewarm, mediocre, sometimes even a little bit negative evaluations. But more impactfully for this election, the Democrats are doing even worse. So basically, there's disappointment with the White House. There is annoyance with the Democratic opposition. If you ask me who's in a better position, I would say to you that history says the Democrats should win. But based on where things stand right now, you have to give the Republicans the edge, even with a shutdown that could happen tonight.
Frank Luntz, thanks so much for that. Appreciate it.